inform.
Religious freedom is about people of faith being able to live out their faith, live out their convictions, no matter where they are.
We equip.
Sacred honor is the courage to speak truth, to live out your free speech.
We also rejoice in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome to The Core here on American Family Radio. I'm Walker Wildmon. Glad to have you with us live on today's program. AFR.net is the website. AFR.net. You can check us out on the web. You can also check us out in your local app store. Whatever device you have, to go to your app store, type in AFR or American Family Radio. Click the download button. It's free, and you can get access to all of our content there on the AFR app. Also, we've got the video up on our Facebook page, At the Core on Facebook, on all of the American Family Radio handles on social media, and up at stream.afa.net, which is our own video streaming platform that we've built for your perusal, and it's free. You can create a free account there at stream.afa.net. You can create a watch list. You can favorite shows that will queue up in your library. You can even get notifications when we go live there at stream.afa.net. John chapter 3 is where we have been this week. Here, Jesus is teaching about what it means to be born again, what it means to be born of the Holy Spirit. Nicodemus in verse 4 says, "How can a man be born when he is old? Can he enter a second time into his mother's womb and be born?" Jesus answered in verse 5, "Most assuredly I say to you, unless one is born of water and of the Spirit, he cannot enter the kingdom of God." That verse 6, that which is born of the flesh is flesh, and that which is born of the Spirit is spirit. That's John chapter 3, verses 4 through 6. Well, I want to make you aware of MediShare. If you listen to American Family Radio for any extended period of time, you'll hear us running MediShare spots here on the network. They've been a long-time friend of the ministry, long-time underwriter. And MediShare is Christ-centered believers committed to wellness and health coverage together. And so MediShare is a health cost-sharing ministry. They've been around since 1993, very well trusted in the industry. They're the alternative to the high-cost health insurance plans that are out there on the market, which we'll probably actually talk about this show. But I wanted to give a shout-out to MediShare, especially as this is typically open enrollment season for many people. MediShare comes highly recommended here at American Family Radio, and we've been partnering with them for a long, long time. So if you want to check out what they have to offer, the unique thing about these health-sharing ministries, such as MediShare, is they don't have a designated open enrollment period. You can enroll year-round. So that's the good thing about MediShare, is you can enroll 12 months out of the year. Medishare.com is that URL. MEDI share.com is the URL. Medishare.com is the URL. Of course, you'll hear the spots on the network. If you listen pretty loyally, you'll hear the MediShare spots. But I wanted to give them a shout out as many people are factoring in which type of health coverage they're going to do for themselves and their families. I've heard great things. I'm not personally enrolled in MediShare, but I know some coworkers that are, and I hear very, very good things about it. You know, everybody that I talk to that goes into it a little bit skeptical, how's this going to work? You know, is what's going to be covered? All of that is addressed, and once people enroll, all I hear is positive reviews from folks that are enrolled in MediShare. Medishare.com is the URL. MEDIshare.com is that URL. All right. Well, as I mentioned this week and last week, our tours to Israel and Greece are coming up in March of this upcoming year, and which will be here before you know it. And registration is going to close the first week of December. So the first week of December, registration is going to close for our Israel and our Greece tours. Those are back-to-back trips coming up in March of 2026. If you want to know more or you want to register right before the deadline in a couple weeks, you can simply go to wildmangroup.com, wildmangroup.com. And thank you to everyone who participated in our annual Christmas button campaign. We've got news out late this week from our team, that we've essentially sold out of all of our Christmas buttons. Both the previous design and the new design, both are sold out at the Resource Center. So I'm not going to give you the URL. I'm not going to talk about how great they are because that'll just make you want them more. But we are out of the Christmas buttons, and we thank you to everyone who jumped on board in the last few weeks and helped us sell out of our annual Christmas buttons. All right, let's talk Affordable Care Act, which has become the Unaffordable Care Act. Let's talk President Trump, Republicans. What are we going to do here? Remember, one of the core tenets that was keeping the government shut down on behalf of the Democrats was they wanted to continue subsidizing Obamacare, because Obamacare is historically unaffordable. It's broken. It doesn't work. It's failing. It's causing mass chaos in the health insurance marketplace. And the Democrats were trying to save Obamacare. That was the essence of the shutdown, and of course they failed. The subsidies are going to expire, I believe, January 1. That's what the shutdown was all about. But let's listen to President Trump talking about the need to get rid of Obamacare and maybe try something different that's less government involvement. Clip 1.
We're negotiating with lawmakers, and I've had personal talks with some Democrats. I can't tell you who they are. I just don't want to do that. It's not fair to them. About paying large amounts of dollars back to the people. You know, this was my idea. It came up during that. You know, oftentimes under times of stress, like the shutdown, you come up with great ideas that you wouldn't have thought of before. The insurance companies are making a fortune. Their stock is up over 1,000% over a short period of time. They are taking in hundreds of billions of dollars, and they're not really putting it back, certainly not like they should. So when I see this, and when I've seen this over the last pretty short period of time, I said, why do we just pay this money directly to the people of our country and let them buy their own health insurance? And you know, I made that statement, and I made it a little bit cavalierly, but it sounded good. And everybody has picked it up, including Democrats. And I am talking to some Democrats right now about doing that. People love it. We're going to take the money. Well, if it gets approved, we're going to take the money. We're going to pay it back to the people of our country to go out and buy health insurance. Now, they can put it in a health account. We can do it a lot of different ways. But they buy their own health insurance. They can negotiate price. And it's going to be locked, so they can't go out and buy a Cadillac. They can go out and buy health insurance.
All right, so I do have some thoughts on this. Anything we can do to ditch Obamacare, I'm open to the concept, okay? But let's think through this, all right? I do think that this is going to have to be addressed. Now, one thing I want to be careful about here is taking the bait, okay? So let's not be naive here. When was the last time the Democrats had our best interest at heart? And the silence you hear is exactly what I thought we would hear. When was the last time the Democrats had our best interest at heart? It's been a long time. What I'm concerned about here, and if you're in the Trump administration, we've got a station right outside of D.C. Listen up here, okay? This is what you guys need to be thinking about. What I'm concerned about is this a ploy by the Democrats to distract the Trump administration in the last 12 months before the midterms? Is this a ploy to distract the Trump administration in the remaining 12 months with a trifecta of government before the midterms? We've talked about the probability of Democrats taking back the House, which would assure almost nothing of the Trump agenda gets done. I might suggest that this could be a ploy by the Democrats to completely and utterly distract and side rail the legislative agenda of the president for the remaining 12 months until the midterms are over. Call me skeptical. I'm not really sure the Democrats are on board with fixing anything because Obamacare has been broken from day one. Health insurance premiums have been skyrocketing for a long time. And all of a sudden, in 2025 and going into 2026, as President Trump is rocking and rolling on his legislative, economic, and executive agenda, we want to spend the next 6 to 9 months debating Obamacare? And at the end of the day, do we really think we're going to get enough Democrats on board to repeal President Obama's hallmark legislation and do what? Not replace it? No, they're going to try to replace it with something. What are they going to try to replace it with? And let's talk about sending money back to the American taxpayer. All right. First off, this is the taxpayer's dollar either way it goes. I would rather President Trump drive down the cost of health insurance through free market ideals and less government engagement and involvement, as opposed to filter all of my money through the federal government so they can cut a check back to me. Maybe we should just reduce the tax burden here. Now, that's a creative idea. Do we go to the tax code? Do we reduce the tax burden for folks who cover their own health insurance? Maybe individuals that aren't on company plans. Maybe you do some kind of tax credit, some kind of tax deduction to help offset some of these costs. Maybe, but then do we need the government subsidizing health insurance through cutting checks to American taxpayers? I mean, isn't that in essence what they've been doing? Except for the checks have been going to the health insurance companies directly. But at the end of the day, if you give the subsidy to the American taxpayer and then they spend that on health insurance, isn't that the same net effect of subsidizing Obamacare? I would suggest that it is. I don't think we really need any subsidies, if we're being honest. I think we need to use free market principles to drive down the cost and make things more affordable and let taxpayers just keep their own money to begin with. So, if we want to entertain some form of tax credit for health insurance related costs, maybe. I'm open to the general idea, but I'm not really a fan of sending money to Washington for them to filter it and send it back to me. And I'm not really sure that cutting checks to Americans is going to drive down the cost of anything. I think we tried that during COVID. So we'll see where it goes. But if I'm the Trump administration and I am Russ Vought, and I'm the legislative and the domestic policy team, I'm going into this very skeptical about burning the next 6 to 9 months arguing with Chuck Schumer about how much money we're going to further sink into Obamacare to keep the thing alive, which is in essence what they would be talking about here. And so call me a skeptic, call me a cynic, whatever. I just don't think this is going to go anywhere good. I think what's probably going to happen is they're going to come up with some Obamacare 2.0. Maybe they'll call it Trump Care to make it sound good. And it's going to be the same thing, but just with a different name, a little bit different branding. Maybe people get checks cut to themselves and it makes taxpayers feel good for about 3 seconds. But I just don't think when you're debating with Democrats, you're going to get something good here. Now, if they want to deal with this in reconciliation and get Republican-only votes, now we're talking. Now we can probably get something good through. But I'm just not sure Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries are going to give President Trump what he wants and what he needs to move something significant over the finish line dealing with health insurance. I just don't think it's going to happen. So my warning is let's avoid the rabbits. Let's not chase rabbits for the next 10 months on something that may not even happen. We'll see you next time.
Candace talks about finding out she was pregnant Thankfully, an ultrasound provided by Preborn allowed her to hear her baby's heartbeat.
The sonogram sealed the deal for me. My baby was like this tiny little spectrum of hope. And I saw his heart beating on the screen. And knowing that there's life growing inside, that sonogram changed my life. I went from just Candace to mom. Thank you to everybody that has given these gifts. You guys are giving more than money. You guys are giving love.
Preborn currently has clinics that do not have ultrasound machines. Would you consider a leadership gift and sponsor a machine today? These life-saving machines cost $15,000, more than most centers can afford. Your donation will save countless lives for years to come. Dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby, or go to preborn.com/AFR.
At the Core podcasts are available at afr.net. Now, back to At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to The Core here on American Family Radio. Thank you for joining us for this edition of the program. Well, we brought in an excellent guest of the program just now, Tyler O'Neill. He's senior editor at the Daily Signal, which is a division of the Heritage Foundation. And Tyler has written extensively over the years on the Southern Poverty Law Center and their lies and deception and how they operate to smear conservative groups, etc., and how they've strayed from their original founding. All of that's packed into his book. Tyler's with us now. Hey, Tyler, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Well, Tyler, you and I connected back a couple months ago, actually in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination, because the Southern Poverty Law Center's name just keeps popping up. And they've done hit pieces, obviously, on Charlie Kirk in the months leading up to his assassination. They've actually done hit pieces on me. I'm almost 100% positive they've done hit pieces on you, if you've written about them, probably so. But this organization has been around a long time. They've got a lot of money, and they're very shady, to say the least. So you've written on some of this. So give us a little background there, and then we'll get into some of the core tenets of your book.
Yeah, so the SPLC, as the name suggests, it was founded to provide legal representation to poor people in the South. And to say that it has strayed far from that original mission would be a vast understatement. Now we're talking about a behemoth organization with an endowment of upwards of $740 million. That's larger than most big nonprofits. It's larger than many universities. It's a really big, more than 2/3 of $1 billion in its endowment. And it got that way because it put itself out there as the main force fighting the KKK. In the 1980s, and of course, everybody hates the KKK for good reason. They are the definition of a hate group. And so when the SPLC originally started fighting the Klan, there are different versions of the SPLC. The first one was when it was focused on representing poor people in the South. Then it started going after the Klan, and there was a time when all the lawyers quit en masse because they said, look, they told Morris Dees, who is the co-founder, look, you're focused on the Klan. Fighting the Klan in court is like shooting fish in a barrel. We want to help real people. We don't want to be going after the Klan because clearly you're doing it for the donor dollars because they were pouring in. And even then they were pouring in. Ever since, they've just gotten bigger and bigger. And the SPLC today has this hate map where they took their qualifications in fighting the Klan and they said, look, we're the primary source combating hate in the United States, and we're going to put groups on this hate map that have nothing to do with the Klan, yet because we have this record of fighting the Klan, we're essentially suggesting that these people are on par with the Klan, that they're hateful in that way. So in the past, this started in the 2000s. They started publishing this hate map. In around, I think it was 2010, they added a whole bunch of conservative traditional family values groups to this map, saying these are anti-LGBTQ hate groups. And originally it was just anti-gay groups, then it became anti-LGBT, then it became anti-LGBTQ plus. Now they're so set on their agenda. And so at the same time, they're starting to push a liberal agenda on their own. And they've been advocating. They have an education arm that used to be called Teaching Tolerance. Now it's Learning for Justice, because apparently tolerance wasn't firm enough. But that group has pushed critical race theory in schools, pushed gender ideology in schools, and now they're using their hate map as a weapon to silence dissent from their far left agenda. And it's a really brilliant fundraising tool. I mean, as the title of my book, Making Hate Pay, comes from an SPLC, a former SPLC staffer, who wrote a big tell-all in 2019 because they had a racial discrimination and sexual harassment scandal that the media has since buried. And he said, that their hate accusations are a highly profitable scam meant to bilk Northern liberals of their money by suggesting that the South is uniquely hateful. And by, claiming that groups, mainstream conservative groups, like the Family Research Council, like Alliance Defending Freedom, like now Turning Point USA. They added Turning Point USA to the hate map 2 months before the assassination of Charlie Kirk.
Yep.
And that wasn't the first time. I mean, in 2012, you had the shooting at the Family Research Council where a terrorist told the FBI he used the hate map to target the Family Research Council and wanted to shoot everyone in the building and smear a Chick-fil-A sandwich in their faces. So this is the kind of thing that the SPLC condemned that attack. They condemned the assassination of Charlie Kirk, but they haven't removed Family Research Council or Turning Point from the hate map after violence has occurred.
Yeah, one thing, Tyler, that I've noticed, it's almost guaranteed. When they run hit pieces and hit pieces is putting it mildly, when they run these hit pieces on people like myself, and I'm not trying to make this all about me, I'm just giving a specific example that I'm aware of. When they ran hit pieces on me back a few months ago, it was in the same article as Charlie Kirk. The Facebook comments were vile. I mean, these are very vile people. There's kind of slanted death threats within the Facebook comments. Now, they're indirect. They probably don't meet the legal threshold for criminal charges, but they're sure enough violent threats and harassing threats. But it's the SPLC that stirs the pot. It's almost guaranteed. Every time these radical left wingers, a lot of them Antifa, when they get riled up and they start emailing off threats and posting vile stuff on social media, a lot of it is because the SPLC is stirring the pot. And I would be surprised. I actually wouldn't be. I wouldn't be surprised if there is some connection between some of these folks that are being arrested for violent threats on the left, maybe even the Charlie Kirk assassin, if they don't at some point have a connection with the Southern Poverty Law Center. And when I say connection, I'm talking about following them on social media, reading their emails, some type of digesting of this SPLC propaganda that further motivates them towards violence. I would not be surprised at all because, once again, you just mentioned one documented case, and there's others of these people who've been arrested for either threatening violence or committing violence that are consumers of the Southern Poverty Law Center content. Let me ask you this, Tyler, as far as in your book and in your research and your writings, the SPLC has this fascinating connection to the media, and it's this incestuous relationship where all of the search engine algorithms just love the SPLC. And part of this is because these left-wing journalists, so-called journalists, they are hyperlinking to the SPLC every time they write about groups like FRC and us. They're constantly citing back to the SPLC, which is building the, quote, credibility of it in the algorithms. But what have you uncovered about some of the journalists, some of the media outlets, and their connections to the SPLC?
Well, I think it is exactly as you mentioned. So when, I had some friends who were reaching out and saying I think Google's being bought off by the SPLC because they're so high in the search results. And I'm like, well, not really. What's happening is that many of these journalists consider the SPLC to be a reliable source. They either don't know better or they want to be activists trying to make the right's ideas unpalatable. And so they constantly cite the SPLC, and it raises the search rankings for these pages to the degree that sometimes you get a situation where you're searching for an organization and it's the SPLC's attack on that group that comes up in your search results before the web page of that conservative group. There was a time in 2017 when I can't remember GuideStar decided to put SPLC's hate map, their hate group accusation on the pages, on the profile pages of each of these conservative nonprofits. And thankfully, there was a large outcry. There was a lawsuit that Liberty Counsel filed. And eventually, they decided, oh, this isn't such a good idea after all. But this kind of thing is happening over and over and over again. And what we saw, particularly after Charlottesville, is these social media companies, these tech companies, using the SPLC to blacklist conservatives, to cut them off from various services. And this is a really big deal. And thankfully, we've been calling it out. These companies have mostly backtracked, but that kind of interference with business practices it raises real questions about potential liability. But on your point, I think the main point you made about Antifa is a really good one. The SPLC actually has documented ties to Antifa. We have documents that show that SPLC materials are used by Antifa activists, agitators on the ground. And then you also have direct ties. So we have an SPLC attorney who was arrested and charged with domestic terrorism in 2023 because he was at one of these Stop Cop City violent riots where they were burning police equipment and construction equipment that was building a police training facility in Atlanta. So these ties are very clear and very obvious. There actually was a woman who was profiled in the magazine Wired as Antifa's secret weapon. And even at the time, she said she was feeding information back and forth between agitators on the ground and the Southern Poverty Law Center. And then she went on to be hired full-time by the Southern Poverty Law Center. Interestingly, she's no longer there. And the SPLC has gone through a few very tumultuous years, to put it mildly. But I don't know entirely why she's no longer there, but I do know that the ties between the SPLC and Antifa are multifaceted.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the most effective thing, in my opinion, is further delegitimizing the Southern Poverty Law Center publicly. And that's what your work has done. That's what your book has helped to do, and others, is to just make them a pariah and make them not acceptable for mainstream consumption. And we've 100%, and we've done a pretty good job. There's a lot less media citations of the SPLC, at least from credible sources. You're going to get some Huffington Post stuff, probably, that links to them. But a lot of the major media outlets are not talking about the SPLC much anymore, or at least citing their map. But we're working. We've got to keep the pressure on, though, because we can just turn around and blink our eye, and then boom, before you know it, these major media outlets are citing the SPLC again. One thing we're going to work on shareholder activism is ensuring that these financial institutions are not using the SPLC to filter out different nonprofits that donors can give through, for example, through donor advice funds. So that's one thing I'm working with Jerry Boyer on. But one last thought, Tyler, on just how to continue this momentum that we've built, and then make sure you tell folks how they can get your book.
Thank you. Well, I think every opportunity we can make us think about this. If you are so a lot of these companies don't know sometimes that the SPLC is unacceptable. So one of the greatest things that you can do, if you see, if you work with a company, or you take the services of a company, or ideally you're a shareholder like Jerry Boyer is, you can raise these issues in various different arenas, saying like, if you have a donor advised fund, make sure that they're not using the Southern Poverty Law Center to screen people. One of the ways you can do that is just to ask, hey, can I give money to Alliance Defending Freedom, to Turning Point USA, to the Family Research Council, to family policy councils, to a host of the organizations that really have no business being on the hate map. And you can make the point in your life. And just in general, if you comment, if you can write letters to the editor, whenever somebody is citing the SPLC, let them know it's not reliable. I saw a poll recently that showed that the SPLC is actually above water with the majority of Americans. And I think that, we have to do more work to expose why they're totally not reliable. So my book, Making Hate Pay, The Corruption of the Southern Poverty Law Center, is, I wrote that a few years ago. It's a little outdated now. I have another book called The Woktopus, The Dark Money Cabal Manipulating the Federal Government, in which the SPLC plays a fairly big role because they impacted the Biden administration. This is an ever scandal. There are more documents that the Department of Justice under Biden colluded with the SPLC, and the FBI cited them in the notorious anti-Catholic memo. Thankfully, Kash Patel has been fantastic, saying the SPLC is a discredited smear factory, separating completely the Bureau from the SPLC. But there's always more to be done. You can also follow me in the Daily Signal at dailysignal.com. We're on all platforms. I'm biggest on X, but we're also on Truth Social, on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. The one place we're not is TikTok. That's because until the Chinese Communist Party is completely divested, we're not having anything to do with that platform.
Excellent, Tyler. Hey, appreciate your work, brother. Keep it up, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks.
All
Thanks
right.
again for having me.
Absolutely. That's Tyler O'Neill, senior editor over at the Daily Signal, which is a division of the Heritage Foundation. Also, he is author of Making Hate Pay, The Corruption of the Southern Poverty Law Center. So we'll link to that book over on the rundown on the show notes over at afr.net. By the way, we mentioned this a couple of times, but we list the show notes, a lot of the links to the articles we talk about, etc., over at afr.net on today's podcast notes. So you go to the podcast page of today's episode, scroll down at the bottom of the audio, you'll see a lot of links to the content from today's program and every day that we host the program. All right, we'll be back in a few.
At the Core podcasts are available at afr.net. Now, back to At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to today's program here on American Family Radio. Walker Wildmon here with you. Well, I mentioned this in the first segment, and I'll mention it again. We are going to Israel and Greece in March of 2026, and registration is closing the first week of December. So if you want to join us, go there and check it out over at wildmangroup.com, wildmangroup.com. Chris Woodward is with us from American Family News. Chris, welcome back.
Thank you very much.
Well, Chris, we did get some economic data, some jobs numbers, and the Trump administration, I saw J.D. Vance did a panel with Breitbart earlier in the week, and they're pretty happy with where things are moving.
Yeah, for people that haven't seen the numbers yet, economists, people that went to school for a very long time, thought we would see somewhere around the neighborhood of 50,000 jobs. We actually got 119,000 jobs, so a much better than expected jobs number for the Trump administration at a time in which Democrats and other critics have been saying the administration is not as focused on the economy as he said he would when he was running for re-election or re-entry into office here. It was interesting because just before the release of the report, the Associated Press put out a preview saying that the administration was bracing for a dismal jobs report. And then the number comes out and, then they had to kind of eat crow or whatever the saying is, where you have to put better than expected jobs number here. The administration is excited about it. Caroline Leavitt yesterday at the White House press briefing talked about it. One of the things that she mentioned was the fact that construction was doing well. As we've talked about on this show, you need construction to do well because you need those people working. and people making things that construction workers use, realtors selling homes, all kinds of things. And you match that, Walker, with news that gas prices are cheaper today than they have been in other Thanksgiving periods. Things are going well for the administration, despite what you might see on television.
Yeah, the labor market had been weakening, but it was weakening under Biden. They were just lying about the numbers. And then we got the true numbers under President Trump, and it wasn't very good. And so the Fed began a rate lowering cycle, which I think was a little overdue. But here we are. Things aren't hunky-dory, to use an old saying. Things aren't great, but they're moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
And the vice president said it well when he said recently that it didn't take 10 months to mess this economy up, and it's going to take more than 10 months to fix it. The point is, it took Biden 4 years to do the damage that he did, so it's going to take some time for the Trump administration to fix what's going on. I do want to play. This is going to be clip 2. This is going to be the White House, Caroline Leavitt, talking about wage growth and native-born job openings. This is going to be clip 2.
In economic news, the September jobs report showed the American economy remains strong, with 119,000 new jobs added, more than double expectations. These gains came after the summer passage of President Trump's historic tax cuts and multiple big trade deals with countries around the world. In particular, construction jobs surged by 19,000 in September, the largest monthly gain in a year. Nearly all of this solid monthly job growth came from the private sector and went to Americans rather than foreign-born workers, the opposite of what we saw under the previous administration. Inflation also remains under control, and wages are up by 3.8% over the year for American workers because of President Trump's pro-growth policies. In fact, real wages are on pace to increase roughly $1,200 for the average worker this year under President Trump. This is a complete reversal of the failed Biden era, when we saw inflation skyrocket to 9%. Causing private sector workers to see their wages decline by approximately $3,000. We know that Americans are still hurting from the 4-decade high inflation caused by Joe Biden and the Democrats. But President Trump is making significant progress to fix this, and he will not stop working until he solves it. As the president recently stated, he is never satisfied.
Well, there you have it. So the native-born job openings and hires is a very big deal because when you looked at President Biden's 4 years, virtually all of the hiring growth was net foreign-born workers. Now,
and the government.
Yeah,
government
when you
jobs.
run native-born hires versus foreign-born hires, the foreign-born outpaced the native-born. That's the point here. That was under Joe Biden. That was a disaster. And so you're seeing the foreign-born worker jobs are actually negative, like 700,000 over the last 10 months or so, which is a very big deal. So you're getting more jobs for the American people, for people who were born in this country, who are American citizens, not here on some kind of work visa, etc. And then wage growth being at, she said, roughly 3.8%. That's a big deal as well. That's got to keep going to outpace inflation. But, Chris, I think that the One Big Beautiful Bill is going to help. I think that if we can get a trade deal with China, that's going to help. They're already beginning to buy soybeans, per the Ag Secretary, Brooke Rollins. But there probably is going to have to be some other type of legislation using reconciliation before the midterms to really light a fire on this economy.
Yeah, we need to get spending even more under control.
Yes.
The reason I say that, it sounds like such a basic thing, but the government is so big, it's going to take a long time to do it. But it can be done. And the reason why it should be done is because government spending impacts everybody listening to this show, and then some. And if we can bring down the amount of spending, that will, over time, bring down your tax bill. It will bring down all kinds of things. And so we need to get spending down while we increase our energy output, because as we've talked about on the show, the more you do with energy, it's going to help with inflation. And all these things will, if they are allowed to actually be developed and continue, all these things will pretty much start to really have a positive impact, I would say, by the spring, if not the early summer, which is the exact time that you need it to happen when you're trying to get reelected in a
Yes,
midterm election.
Exactly. I think that Republicans have an uphill battle to win the midterms, to keep control of the House. They have a statistical uphill battle just because of sheer numbers. Mm-hmm. And history shows that the minority party, the non-White House party, basically, loses the House of Representatives 26 out of 28 of the last 28 midterms.
Right.
And so Republicans have an uphill battle. It's not impossible. Democrats are wild. They're crazy. And if voters aren't in for mom-dommy type policies from the House of Representatives, then the Republicans could maintain control.
Yeah. The one thing that I could see, the one thing that's different between this upcoming midterm election and previous ones, with all the years where the sitting president saw his party lose seats, there weren't communists running small governments.
Right.
This time around, obviously, you've got Mamdani. It's an absolute certainty that bad things are going to happen there. On the West Coast, you've got somebody that's Mamdani-like, if not actually worse, that is talking about how we're not going to allow stores to close and we're going to offer all kinds of free stuff and we're going to Trump-proof Seattle, match that with Minneapolis, which is already far left. All these things I think you're going to see on television news programs on a nightly basis. You'll see posts about all the crazy things they said or did in office on X, and those kinds of things I think you will see on campaign ads from consultants that Republicans trying to get reelected are going to hire to prove to people this is why you can't let the other party have our majority. We have to remain in power. And oh, by the way, the guy that just reduced your tax bill and allowed you to have more take-home pay is going to be looking to continue his agenda, and that's not going to continue if you put Democrats, socialists, and communists back in office.
Yeah, we have to defy this human nature cyclical way of governing. And what I mean is this, things get bad, then we wake up, and then we fix it, or well, at least we get on the right path, right? And we course correct, and then we fall asleep at the wheel again, and then we go off the road, and then we have to course correct. That's not a good way of governing, because you're going to need our country just can't afford this 4-year whiplash. Like every 4 years, we have a socialist, and then we have a free market guy, and then we have a populist. Yeah. Our system just can't work that way. You got to have some form of consistency.
Yeah. I've always kind of scratched my head at this is how Virginia chooses to govern itself. But for those not familiar with how Virginia operates, a governor after a 4-year term has to step aside and let somebody else have a turn, even if that governor was successful and people liked him. Case in point, Virginia is about to go back to a Democratic governorship. I don't know how businesses operate, because businesses don't operate on the, well, we'll hope it works. They generally have a 5 and 10-year plan for things, and you can't do that when people wanting you to do the exact opposite business policy take office every 4 years.
Yeah.
And you really can't do it on a national level of 400 million people.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So this, I'm actually going to play a clip here, Chris. I think we've got a couple minutes left, but this is Democrat on what they're going to do if they get control of the House of Representatives. This is Representative Al Green. I think he's out of Texas. But, Bobby, let's play this clip. If folks wonder what's going to happen if Hakeem Jeffries is the House Speaker in 2027, listen to this.
I think that the Texas court made a proper decision. I believe that the Supreme Court should follow the rules, the ruling of the Texas court. But I also know this. The Supreme Court may not. And if it does not, we still have to proceed. We cannot allow anything to get in the way of impeachment, conviction, and removal. That's what this is about. Impeachment, conviction, and removal.
Well, Chris, that's it. Impeachment, conviction, and removal. That's to quote Texas Representative Al Green.
From the people who have campaigned for generations on, we care about you most, and we're here to help you, clearly just want to get rid of the guy that's in the White House. And they won't stop with J.D. Vance either.
No,
that's the other thing. Like, J.D. Vance would become president if
anybody
God forbid,
with an R by their name will be impeached.
Yeah,
and
he's guilty
matter.
by association. They'll find some reason to convict or impeach him as well.
Yeah. So, the American people, number one, you've got to be breathing kind of a sigh of relief that we don't have auto pen in the White House. And you don't have the Green New Deal and $5 a gallon gas. The American people, the voters, got to be thinking to themselves, boy, I don't want to do that again. I don't want to do another Nancy Pelosi 2 years of impeachment trials and circus. And so we'll just have to see where the midterms go, Chris. But it's very clear that the Democrats aren't really interested in governing, and some could say the same thing about Republicans. But it's orange man bad. It's Trump's, Hitler. That's what they say. And we're going to do everything we can to oppose him. And this is after he just won a landslide victory less than 12 months ago.
And the popular vote. That's the one thing that we have to continue to remember.
Duly noted.
Not only did he win the Electoral College, which obviously you have to win to get the White House, but he beat Kamala Harris by the popular vote with the help of minorities who sided with him versus the minority that was running for office, sexual and racial minorities. So Trump clearly had he won over people. You had that one county in Texas that hadn't voted Republican since like 18-something.
Yep. Yes.
And they voted for Donald Trump
yes.
In a heavily Hispanic area at a time in which a candidate was running on immigration reform.
Yeah.
So the American people want him, and they are clearly interested in his policies working, which is why Republicans need to continue to have a backbone, just like they showed in the shutdown soap opera.
Yep.
And they need to make sure that they run to win versus not to lose, which, as we've talked about on the show, they always do.
Yeah.
Quit worrying about what it's going to mean in the next election and worry about the American citizen in this election.
Yes. Continue mass deportations, continue deregulation, continue the trade deals, continue spending less money. If we need to have another government shutdown to spend less money, it is what it is. And they've got to pass another reconciliation bill between now and the midterms. Probably time it, to your point, after the summer, heading into the fall.
Yeah.
Time it that way, because the American people have to feel a recent victory, and they have to feel like things are moving in the right direction. That's how you defy the midterm probability of Republicans losing the House.
And Americans need to make sure they show up to vote. I'm not telling you how to vote. I can't tell you how to vote. But if you are for this or you're against that, you need to make sure that you show up to vote, and more importantly, you vote down ballot.
Yeah, it's a turnout issue during the midterms.
Every year we talk about this, every election year.
Yep, that's right. Exactly. We've got to turn out, folks. And it took decades to drive our country into this ditch. And it's going to take a while to get it out. So we've got to think long term. We can't just be, take things day by day. We got to think long term. And we've got to plan for the future. And we've got to continue steering this ship in the right direction, because future generations depend on it. Chris, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
All right, folks, check out American Family News, afn.net. We'll see you next time.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily